What if I told you that young men are taking a hammer and hitting their cheekbones to achieve a more chiseled look? Sounds dystopian, right? But this is the reality of the new internet trend called Looksmaxxing, and we need to talk about it. Hi, I'm Indy, and I'm researching one of the darkest corners of the internet, Looksmaxxing, and black pill content. This is part one of my four-part series that will delve into the community of Looksmaxxing and how this niche internet subculture links to the manosphere and incel culture. I will also be discussing Stanley Cohen's moral panics theory and how Looksmaxxers are defined as a threat to society using his framework. I started researching this as I stumbled across it on TikTok when it wasn't as popular, and I went down the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole leads into anti feminist ideology, far right views, and radicalization, as well as misogyny. Over the next three videos, I'll be explaining and discussing the theory, what my research findings say with the connection of clavicular, and finally, how I think we can resolve this issue and how I implemented feedback from assessment 2. Just a PSA, I'm sticking with this video of clavicular for the whole thing just because I really feel like it depicts the whole energy of this series and he just looks so scary. Have you ever been bedrotting, scrolling, when you stumble across something and think, should we be worried about this? This is called a moral panic. Moral panics are when the public has a collective concern in response to a perceived threat to the values or safety of society. This term is usually used in relation to a specific group or behaviour. The term was first constructed by Stanley Cohen in 1972 in his text called Folk Devils and Moral Panics. He is quoted as saying the term panic has caused unnecessary trouble and the term is unfortunate because of its connotations with irrationality. David Garland, who wrote an article on the concept of moral panics, unpacks this term, stating exactly what Cohen's fear was, that the term deflates social reaction. In a journal article published in the Body and Society journal, Suzhua, which I might be butchering, states, since the 2000s, incel communities and the manosphere have continued to grow and allow the creation of online spaces for men to express their dislikes of prejudice against men and misandry. It is also found through research in this article that Looksmaxxing is not just about ascending, but that it is deeply tied to resentment towards women, far-right views, misogyny, as well as anti-gender and nationalist rhetoric. It is clear that the young boys and men that are a part of this niche blame feminism for the perceived decline of society, which was stated by Suswa. I also used the book titled The Incel Rebellion by Lisa Sugiura, once again might be butchering, I apologise, to further explain the connection the Looksmaxxing community has with incel culture. Incels are described as part of larger backlash against feminism that is driven by the manosphere. It connects men who believe that in order to survive, they must retaliate against feminine values and misandrous culture, as that is what they believe has corrupted our society. These beliefs and communities are actually really easy to come across as they are usually labelled as like men's issues groups and things like that. And groups within this manosphere can involve MRAs, tradcons, incels, PUAs, men going their own way, and that is all stated in Sugiura's article. These groups, as suggested by Sugiura, demonstrate how accessible it is for young men to slip into the cracks of these toxic echo chambers that encompass what the manosphere really is. When you connect these three sources, it shows a clear picture of what seems to be about appearance and improvement, but is actually a channel to one of the most dangerous subcultures on the internet, and that, my friends, is Looksmaxxing. I'm sorry to anyone that does not enjoy this background, but I am actually sticking with it. I wish I could say that I didn't go as far down this rabbit hole as I actually did. It was fascinating what I found, but it was also equally as terrifying, so let's dive into some of my findings. The biggest takeaway from my research is that Looksmaxxing is not some standalone micro trend or like thing that your little brother is going to be like just harmlessly looking at, but instead it is actually the front door to the manosphere and incel culture. Susbois connected the Looksmaxxing niche to the incel community who share alt-right views and the flawed beliefs that feminism and gender equality are ruining society. This demonstrates that looksmaxxing isn't necessarily about ascending and bettering yourself or about reaching the Chad, but that it is inherently political and something that should not be ignored. Now, I know I've been keeping this background of him, so you might have been wondering who is responsible for the popularity of this community. His government name is Braden Peters, but his internet persona is known as Clavicular, or Clav for short. And this is him, ladies and gentlemen. It sounds a bit haunting, right? Like, clavicular is a play on words for your clavicle, your collarbone in your body, which I feel like that name is just very on point for him because with all of his body modifications and gender affirming surgeries, dare I say, it would make sense that his name would reflect something like that. According to a 2026 article that was published to Glamour, Clav's journey included self injecting testosterone, which was bought on the internet since he was 14 years old, bone smashing, which is obviously smashing, well, not obviously, but it's smashing your face with a hammer to achieve stronger bone definition. I don't know why I said obviously, like that's something that's normal. It also included using self-administering fat-dissolving injections, which I actually saw him doing for myself on TikTok as he had a young girl who he was talking to or hanging out with at the time, and she was 17, I believe, at the time that he was injecting her cheeks with this fat-dissolving substance. He also uses self-injectable peptides to lose body fat and become more tan, and on top of all of these things, he does, which I don't think I can say on TikTok because I don't want to have this taken down, but very hard to suppress his appetite. And it's been seen on stream him nearly due to said things. Clav has built this ginormous following by being controversial. He draws in young boys by streaming on Kick, posting on TikTok, and having clips from his stream go viral on TikTok as well. He then exposes these young boys to black pill content, which entails that inferior men have no chance of ever establishing sexual relationships with women. Black pill content also involves how your looks as a man determine your entire worth as a person and the outcomes that you will achieve in your life. And just to be clear, that was my second finding. Now, my final finding was connecting the dots between the manosphere, looksmaxxing, and incel culture, and how all of those ideas link back to moral panics. Through the Glamour article, it is clear that media amplification is highlighting the internet subculture, which gives wider visibility. This article, while it was probably trying to spread awareness about the panic, ironically fuels it. Incels and the manosphere have been examples of moral panics for eons, and now with the internet and the new digital age of social media, these moral panics are more widely and easily accessible to fall into. Looksmaxxing, unfortunately, is the new perfect way to trap these young impressionable minds into a world of misogyny that views women and feminism as the enemy. This research points to the undoubtful view that looksmaxxing, due to the far-right rhetorics and links to incels and the manosphere, is a new moral panic. So we've covered a lot during this deep dive, so let's see what we discovered and what we should do to resolve these issues. I discovered that looksmaxxing is a moral panic, not because it's been overhyped by the media, but because it is a real threat to the values and safety of society due to the anti-feminist rhetoric, misogyny, and far-right values that are pushed within this community. This conclusion came from exploring how the manosphere and incel culture creeps into the looksmaxxing space. This pipeline is real, alarming, and growing more than we realise. So, what can we do about this terrifying discovery? It's important that critical thinking skills and media literacy are taught as young as possible. In this new age of digital and social media, it is important that young kids have the tools to properly analyse and dissect the media that they are consuming. It is also important that these platforms remain in control of what is being posted. I think stronger guidelines for hateful content should be implemented and followed, as well as stronger age restrictions on content that is deemed more mature. After my A2 pitch, I received feedback to implement into Assessment 3. My first piece of feedback was to bring the theories, research and examples together to form a logical argument. I implemented this feedback by connecting the dots between each piece of research and forming the argument that Looksmaxxing should be considered a moral panic due to its connections with the manosphere and incel culture. My second piece of feedback was to define moral panics and further contextualize the issue, using sources and examples to critically think about it, while also supplementing my fourth unacademic source from A2 with more research. I implemented this in my second video by using my academic sources to understand what moral panics are and then contextualize it using the examples of incel culture, the manosphere, and Looksmaxxing with clavicular as my case study. I also incorporated Stanley Cohen's original text as per the feedback I was given to find another academic source to build my argument, as well as another academic source that explains black pill content. In this 4-part series, we've travelled down the rabbit hole of Looksmaxxing and how it is considered a moral panic due to the connections it has to the manosphere and incel culture. Next time someone says, it's not that deep, just remember, it really is.